They said Elias Boone was cursed, but the truth is curses rarely come with thunder or brimstone. Most just settle in quietly, like dust in a man's lungs, until he can't tell if he's breathing or choking. He lived alone on that wide stretch of prairie, a figure more rumor than flesh. Cattle died under his watch, crops withered on his land, and every woman who once tried to share his cabin left before the second winter. They called him the Prairie Knight in jest, as if his armor were forged from silence, and his sword no more than a shovel striking empty soil. It was on a storm-soaked night, with wind wailing like a widow outside his cabin walls, that Elias found her. Abigail Mercer, 24, clutching a Bible to her chest at the fork of the road. Her bonnet sagged from the rain, her shoes sunk deep in mud, her eyes hollow with the look of someone who had already buried too much to count. She did not beg for shelter. She simply stood, spine stiff, as though daring the storm to take her too. Elias, quiet as always, lifted his lantern and motioned to the cabin. She followed without a word, thunder booming like judgment over their heads. Abigail worked to earn her keep. She stumbled through chores at first, her fingers raw from rope and blistered from washing. She burned bread, spilled milk, dropped more wood than she carried, but she kept trying. Elias never scolded, never laughed, only watched with the patience of a man who had long since forgotten the sound of another voice in his home. Slowly, a rhythm formed. Work by day, meals in silence, the creak of a rocking chair at night. Silence, once Elias's curse, grew into something else when shared. But the town noticed. Towns always notice. By the second week, gossips whispered in the mercantile, in the church pews, in the saloon corners. Abigail Mercer, shameless widow, moved into cursed Elias Boone's cabin. She trapped him, they said, though she was barren as dry earth and useless as a broken plow. Some spat the word harlot, others clucked pity, but all agreed scandal sat heavy on her shoulders. Abigail bore it with her chin high, but whispers cut deeper than knives. One evening, after another Sunday of sidelong glares and sharp tongues, she broke by the fire. "They speak of me like I am nothing," she whispered, tears catching in her lashes. Elias, staring into the embers, said, "They've spoken the same of me all my life. I never asked for it either." And for the first time, their silence carried understanding instead of loneliness. The weeks rolled forward, heavy with labor and lightened only by small mercies. Elias draping a shawl over her as she slept by the hearth, Abigail setting a second cup of coffee before him in the gray light of dawn. They did not speak of affection, but lived there in the gestures, quiet and unadorned. Then came illness. Abigail fell fevered, her skin blazing hot, her breath shallow. Elias, who had once dug graves for cattle without blinking, now sat by her bed with a rag and a bowl, whispering clumsy prayers he hadn't said since boyhood. He spooned broth to her lips, wiped sweat from her brow, and confessed to her sleeping form that he feared the silence returning if she left him. For days he kept vigil, eyes burning with sleeplessness. And when she finally stirred, weak but alive, something in him shifted, though he spoke none of it. When strength returned, so too did scandal. Abigail realized, with a trembling hand at her belly, that she was with child, not Elias's, but her late husband's, a final seed planted before death claimed him. She had long thought herself barren, believed the whispers that she carried nothing but shame, and now life quickened within her like a cruel miracle. With tears, she told Elias, expecting disgust, expecting to be cast out. Instead, he looked at her steady, the way a man looks at a horizon he knows he cannot change, and said, "They called you barren. They call me cursed. Seems they've been wrong on both counts." His words, plain as fence posts, carried a grace she had never known. But prairie winds carry news faster than horses, and by sundown the town believed Elias Boone had put a child in the widow Mercer. The saloon buzzed, the church roared with pity and judgment, and even the schoolchildren mocked in whispers. The curse had found its sharpest edge yet. The days that followed tested them both. Elias walked beside Abigail through town, letting every eye see her on his arm. He bought flour and nails as if scandal were no heavier than dust on his boots. Neighbors spat, but he nodded all the same, his silence louder than their laughter. Abigail kept working the ranch, her belly rounding, her pride intact though her heart trembled with each whisper. Together they bore it, until gossip turned from flame to smoke. The climax came on a Sunday morning, when Abigail chose to walk into the church beside him. Every pew stiffened, hymn books clutched like weapons, the pastor's voice cracking on the word fornication. Abigail stood anyway, hand over her belly, and said clear as a bell, "This child is not Elias Boone's, but he has shown me more mercy than any of you who dare call yourselves righteous. If shame is mine, I'll carry it. But if dignity lives anywhere on this prairie, it is in his house." The church gasped, the whispers hissed, but none dared rise against her. Elias bowed his head beside her, silent as always, yet in that silence was thunder. From that day forward, their scandal lost its bite. Gossip, robbed of power, drifted into nothing. By winter, there were simply Elias Boone and Abigail Mercer, the rancher and the widow, living on the edge of the prairie with work to do and a child soon to be born. Neighbors no longer whispered when they passed, for dignity, once spoken aloud, has a way of burning shame to ash. And when spring came and Abigail bore her child, Elias held the infant as though it were his own blood. He never claimed it, never needed to. The gesture was enough. In his silence, the curse that had once haunted his name broke like thawing ice. For curses cannot hold against patience, against quiet acts of mercy, against the endurance of two people who refuse to bow. So take this with you, reader. Rumors ride the wind faster than truth, but they die quicker too. The prairie does not measure a man or woman by the words said against them. It measures them by what they carry through the storm. And sometimes, the gentlest silence outlasts the loudest lie.